You know what's missing in most conversations? The skill to actually navigate them. We've all had that moment when we walk away from a conversation and think,
I should have said that differently. I wish I would have asked a better question.
Or,
ugh, that got weird at the end.
I've definitely had my fair share of those moments. Like the time I enthusiastically congratulated a woman on her pregnancy, only for her to gently inform me that her son was already 10 months old. Oof. I meant well, but that well-meaning comment landed with a thud. Listening well isn't just about being quiet. It's about learning how to move through a conversation with care. It's noticing when to ask more, pause, pivot, or wrap things up gracefully. That's where part 2 of Listen Like You Mean It by Ximena Vengoechea comes in. This book doesn't just teach you to listen. It shows you how to guide the conversation with intention and skill. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Shannon, your Barefoot Librarian. After years of research training and earning a master's degree in holistic education, I've spent my career as a librarian, teacher, and lifelong learner diving into books. And let's be honest, most of them are packed with fluff. But when a book actually delivers, I become your personal footnote detective, sifting through the content to find the research-backed insights that matter. No fluff, no filler, just the good stuff. Now, this is part 2 in my 3-part series on Listen Like You Mean It. If you missed part 1 where we dove into mindset and how to pay attention as you listen, be sure to check out the link below. That'll give you the foundation for everything we're covering today. In this post, we'll be diving into chapters 4 through 10, which show us how to navigate the conversation itself. Think of it as a roadmap for guiding your conversations with clarity and intention, even when things get tricky. Chapter 4, clarify your role. Not every conversation is the same, and not every conversation needs the same version of you. We've all been in those moments where we're not sure if we're supposed to be offering advice, just listening, or maybe providing support in some other way. And if we're not clear about our role, things can get messy. Ximena makes a simple but powerful point here. Clarifying your role early on can save a lot of confusion down the road. It's like setting the ground rules for the conversation, and it helps everyone stay on the same page. For example, imagine someone starts telling you about a problem they're facing. Instead of diving in with a bunch of ideas and suggestions, you could ask,
Do you want me to help you brainstorm solutions, or do you just need to vent for a minute?
This simple question sets the tone and ensures you're offering the support they actually need, rather than jumping in with what you think they might need. It's a small but powerful way to make sure you're aligned with your conversation partner, and it goes a long way toward making the conversation feel more helpful and less confusing for everyone. Ximena talks about something really interesting, the idea of default listening modes. Basically, we all have different ways we tend to listen based on the situation, and knowing which styles you naturally gravitate toward can help you decide the best approach for your specific conversation. Here are the 11 modes she mentions. The explainer. You have a natural urge to share everything you know. While it comes from a good place, sometimes the other person just wants to be heard, not educated. The validator. You're the one who's all about saying,
I get it. That must be tough.
And reassuring them that their feelings are totally valid. This is great for emotional support, but sometimes it's not what your conversation partner needs. They might want a little more. The identifier. You find yourself connecting their experience to your own. While this shows empathy, it can unintentionally turn the conversation toward your feelings instead of staying focused on theirs. The problem solver. You jump straight into fixing mode. Sometimes it's needed, but other times your conversation partner isn't looking for solutions. They might just want to vent. It's important to gauge whether they want help or just a safe place to express themselves. The nurse. You're the caretaker, offering comfort and trying to make them feel better. It's kind, but sometimes it can overshadow that they really need to process their emotions on their own. The diffuser. You're all about diffusing tension and trying to calm things down. But sometimes in doing that, you can gloss over the emotions someone is feeling, not allowing them to express themselves fully. The mediator. You try to step in between two people to help find the resolution. While this can be very helpful, it may unintentionally shut down the person's feelings if they're not ready to move past something quite yet. The empath. You feel the emotions of others deeply, often offering sympathy and connection. While this is great for bonding, it can sometimes overshadow their needs if they need space to think, not just comfort. The interrupter. You're excited to share your thoughts or finish their sentences. While this can help keep the conversation flowing, it can also prevent your conversation partner from fully expressing themselves, leaving them feeling unheard. The interviewer. You start asking a lot of questions, trying to get to the bottom of things. But sometimes the other person just needs to talk, not be grilled. Finally, the daydreamer. You're there physically, but mentally checked out. You might miss important details or emotions that can make the other person feel like they're not really being listened to. The key to clarifying your role is paying attention to cues, both spoken and unspoken. Your conversation partner's personal history, their current emotional state, and your own unique characteristics all play into what's needed in the moment. If you can tune into those cues, you'll have a much better sense of which mode to step into, whether it's offering validation, empathy, or just being present without jumping in with a solution. It's about adjusting your approach based on what they're bringing to the conversation right now. One of my favorite examples of this comes from my marriage. My husband is an incredible problem solver. He's wired to help and jumps into action when he sees need. But over time, he's learned that sometimes the best thing he can do for me in an emotional moment is simply be with me. Now, when things feel heavy, he'll gently ask, "Do you want me to fix this right now or just feel it with you?" That little phrase works like a charm. I instantly feel seen, supported, and understood. And let's be honest, most of the time I want him to feel it with me first, then I'm ready for his solutions. So as you head into your next conversation, remember, it's not just about what you say, but also how you show up. When you take the time to clarify your role, you make the conversation feel less messy, more focused, and way more effective. Chapter 5, deepen the conversation. When it comes to deepening a conversation, asking the right questions is key. Curiosity becomes your superpower here. It's about asking questions that help your conversation partner open up, reflect, and share more. And the best part, the more you ask, the deeper the connection becomes. Start with connecting questions that invite them to share more. Try asking,
How do you feel about that?
or
What does ideal look like for you?
these types of questions show that you're really paying attention and want to understand their perspective. You can also ask,
What would you do if?
fill in the blank, or
How would you approach this?
these get specific and help your conversation or partner think through their feelings or options. But sometimes just nudging someone with encouraging phrases like,
Tell me more about that.
or
Say more about what this means to you.
is all it takes to keep the conversation going. The key is to create space for them to express themselves without rushing or interrupting, which is very difficult for me. Ximena also points out that reflection questions are a great tool to help someone reflect on their situation without overwhelming them. These questions typically clarify if the situation is one thing or the other. Honestly, it made me think of going to the eye doctor when they ask,
Which one is better, 1 or 2, A or B?
for example, you might ask, would you say you feel more frustrated or disappointed? Is it more about wanting a raise or wanting to be recognized? This keeps things simple and gives your conversation partner a chance to focus on what's most important to them. One small but powerful shift in this chapter really stuck with me. Asking better questions. Specifically, Ximena points out that questions starting with what and how tend to open up the conversation, while questions that start with is, are, or do can feel limiting, even a little invasive. Here's what I mean. Instead of,
Do you like your job?
try,
How do you feel about your job?
or swap out
Are you nervous about the promotion?
for,
What's going through your mind as the promotion gets closer?
see the difference? What and how invite reflection, while is, are, and do can back someone into a yes or no answer, when the real story usually lives somewhere in the middle. The goal isn't to interrogate, but to stay genuinely curious and create space for someone to share what's really on their mind. With the right kind of questions, connection naturally flows. Chapter 6, stay flexible. One of the most freeing takeaways from this chapter is the reminder that conversations are not performances. They're not scripts. There's no set checklist to follow. The best conversations are living, breathing, unpredictable things. And we have to stay flexible if we want to make the most of them. That means paying attention to energy shifts. If someone's enthusiasm suddenly drops or they go quiet, it might be a clue to slow down or switch gears. If they light up at a certain topic, let that guide you. Follow the momentum. You don't always have to steer things back to the original point. In fact, some of the best breakthroughs come when we don't circle back, when we take the scenic route instead of the expressway. Let go of the plan. You can have a guiding star, like wanting to connect, understand, or encourage, but don't get too attached to how you thought the conversation should go. Real life truth. Sometimes the conversation you think you're having takes a surprise left turn. Let it. That's where the good stuff lives. Another gem from this chapter is to get comfortable with silence. I know. Silence can feel awkward, but it's not the enemy. It gives space for reflection, shows that you're listening, and invites more depth. A well-placed pause can speak louder than the perfect words. One of my favorite tips, change the scenery. If a conversation feels stuck or heavy, try going for a walk or hopping in the car for a drive. There's something about side-by-side movement that makes it easier to open up. You're not locked in eye contact and you're not stuck in a sterile place. When the environment shifts, you and your conversation partner often relax too. A bonus here is that your conversation is less likely to wear out quickly because the changing surroundings give it little breathers along the way. Ximena shares how she and her office workers sometimes walk around the pond near their office building during check-ins, a casual stroll that sparks better conversation and creative connection. When I read that, I immediately thought of my first year teaching. I wish my principal had done something like that. Instead, we had regular new teacher check-ins in her office. Very formal, very rigid. My phone would ping with a message that she wanted to chat, and the rest of my day would be spent on pins and needles, wondering what I had done wrong. I can't help but wonder how different those conversations might have felt if we had just walked the loop around the school ball field instead of sitting under flickering fluorescent lights. Would we have opened up more? Would I have felt more like a teammate and less like I was on trial? Sometimes a simple change in scenery shifts everything. Not just where the conversation goes, but also how safe and seen we feel within it. Chapter 7, confirm your comprehension. Let's talk about what happens when you think you're on the same page with someone, but actually you're reading from two totally different books. Recently, a fellow booktuber I really admire did a review of a book I've read and loved many times. I was so excited to hear her thoughts, until I wasn't. Her review was scathing. She hated it. I was genuinely surprised, not just because I enjoy the book, but because I deeply respect both the author and the reviewer. They're both Christians who care about scripture, truth, and sharing messages that help people grow. So, what went wrong? As I listened, it became clear she misunderstood the author's intent. Big time. She even accused him of being dishonest and suggested his theology was dangerous. I was stunned. I have a degree in Bible and theology and am the type to look up the original Greek if something feels off. But I've never found this author to be anything but thoughtful and grounded. In fact, I recommend his books all the time. As I read through the comments on her video, one stood out. A man suggested that he'd met the author in person and encouraged the reviewer to call him. He was confident that a conversation would clear everything up. That stuck with me because here's the thing. When we misunderstand people and then run with it, it can do real damage. Misunderstandings left unattended don't just hang out quietly, they grow. And the only way to stop that spiral is to pause and confirm what you actually heard. In conversations, we need to make sure we're not having what Ximena calls two-track conversations, where each person is moving forward assuming shared understanding, but in reality, their tracks are slowly drifting apart. Without correction, these small misalignments turn into major gaps. One of the most powerful tools to stay aligned is learning to reflect, summarize, and ask for clarity. That means listening not just to someone's words, but also to their emotions, tone, and body language. Communication is never just about the literal spoken words. It's about the combination of words plus the feelings that reveals the true meaning. To confirm comprehension in real time, pay attention to key themes or ideas someone keeps coming back to. Look for turning points, signs of agreement or disagreement, or emotional shifts. When you spot these, pause to check in with something like,
It sounds like this part really mattered. Did I catch that right?
or
What I think I'm hearing is, does that sound accurate?
keep it short and neutral, offering a headline-style summary to make sure you're both on the same page. One trick that helps, use their vocabulary. When you reflect back using your conversation partner's words, it tells the other person, I heard you. Not just intellectually, but emotionally. And don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions if something feels unclear.
Can you help me understand that part a little more?
Or,
I want to make sure I didn't miss something. Can we go back to what you said about...
it doesn't make you sound clueless, it makes you sound curious. And that's exactly what a good conversation needs. Also, be sure to scan for nonverbal feedback. If someone's starting to fidget, look away, go quiet, or suddenly seem flat or defensive, don't ignore it. Their reaction tells you a lot about what's working or what's not. Simple cues like a sigh, a pause, or even,
Huh?
or
Seriously?
can clue you in that something's off. When you notice those shifts, pause, reconnect, say,
You look unsure. Is something not landing right?
or
Would it help to hear that a different way?
it's not about being hypersensitive or walking on eggshells. It's about paying attention to the energy in the room. At the end of the day, confirming comprehension is about staying grounded in connection and truth. We do it all the time in reading and research, revisiting a passage to make sure we understood it, double-checking sources, clarifying definitions. So let's bring that same thoughtful attention to our conversations. When we reflect, summarize, and ask for clarity, we create space for real understanding. And that changes everything. Chapter 8, Guide the Conversation. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation that's just stuck? Maybe the person you're talking with keeps circling back to the same story or avoids the heart of the issue altogether. Maybe the conversation has completely derailed and you're deep in tangent territory, wondering how in the world you got there. When this happens, it's not a sign to shut things down. It's an opportunity to gently guide the conversation back to where it needs to go. Redirection is a powerful skill that helps conversations stay productive, especially when things start spiraling or stalling out. Sometimes people avoid hard topics. Other times they fixate, get overwhelmed, or repeat the same thing over and over. Redirecting can look like offering a simple reminder, applying light pressure, or shifting the lens to help them see the situation from a fresh angle. In more formal environments like meetings or professional settings, redirection might sound like,
That's a helpful perspective. Let's zoom out for a second. How does this connect to our main goal?
or
We've spent a while on this piece, and I want to make sure we can also get to...
whatever that topic is. But redirection isn't just for boardrooms. It works beautifully in personal conversations too. Think of it like this. Every conversation has rhythm, and sometimes your role is to be the drummer and help keep things on beat. One way to do that is to track airtime. Imagine you're on a live radio show. Who's doing most of the talking? If one voice is dominating, it might be time to pass the mic. You can say,
Thanks for sharing that. How does that land with the rest of you?
or
That's a fair point. Thoughts from the other side of the table?
redirecting like this creates space for more voices and richer dialogue. Other times, guiding the conversation means protecting the agenda. Tangents are natural, but if they eat up all of the time, the original purpose of the conversation can get lost. It's okay to step in and ask,
Does this feel like a 5-minute conversation or more of a 50?
or
Would it help to come back to what you said earlier about...
whatever that was. These questions help shift the pace and refocus the group without shutting everyone down. A simple,
I was hoping we'd get to touch on...
or
Before we wrap up, I want to make sure we have time to check in on...
goes a long way. If the conversation is spinning or getting heated, sometimes the best redirect is a pause.
Let's come back to that in a bit.
Or
Can you hold that thought? I'd like some time to sit with it before we respond.
you could even say,
Let's table this for now so we don't lose our momentum.
these aren't exit strategies, they're reset buttons. There are moments where you may need to deflect or stand your ground, especially if someone is trying to take a conversation somewhere unhelpful or inappropriate. But even then, the tone matters. You can stay firm and still be kind. This idea of guiding a conversation without being controlling reminds me of a summer internship I did in college in the Himalayan villages of Nepal. We went there to collect research on indigenous people groups. Amazing work, but not easy. We didn't speak Nepali, much less Hindi or any of the rural dialects, so we relied on local interpreters to help bridge the gap. These interpreters quickly became our friends, and we all care deeply about the mission. But let me tell you, the communication breakdowns were real. Americans tend to be direct. We like to get to the point, check the box, and move on. But in Nepal, conversations often unfold slowly with great care. Our interpreters would spend 45 minutes circling something we thought could be covered in 5. And from their side, we probably seemed rushed, abrupt, or even rude. It took time, but we learned to adapt. My teammates and I figured out how to guide the conversation gently, honoring their culture while still reaching our goals. We didn't try to force things. We just shifted our rhythm. And the result was a win-win. That's the heart of this chapter. Whether you're in a meeting, a living room, or a Himalayan village, conversations don't always go the way you expect. People avoid, ramble, get stuck, or fall silent. But you don't have to stay stuck with them. You can be the one who steers things back, not by dominating the moment, but by noticing what's happening and lovingly guiding the dialogue forward. Chapter 9, make an exit. Let's be honest, one of the hardest parts of listening well is knowing when and how to stop. We've all been in conversations that go on too long, where we're silently wondering how to wrap things up without being rude. But here's the thing, exiting well is part of listening well. When we close a conversation with kindness and clarity, we honor everyone's time and energy. I'll be the first to admit this is still a very real struggle for me. When Wes and I first got married, I was so excited that he could be the one to gently tell guests it was getting late. You know, give that little loving nudge that says,
"We love you, now leave."
I thought, perfect, he'll handle it, and I won't have to feel like I'm being rude. But sitting back and letting him always take the lead didn't exactly help me grow. I didn't learn how to communicate those boundaries in a kind, clear way, because he always did it. And honestly, I'm still working on it. Just the other day, I was carrying groceries over to a friend's house when a woman from down the street came out to gush over how adorable my dog is. I couldn't blame her. Tucker is ridiculously cute. But one compliment turned into a full-blown conversation while I stood there with heavy bags digging into my arms. We talked until my fingers went numb. Finally, I smiled and said,
"It was so lovely meeting you, but I actually have to run now."
It felt awkward at the moment, but it was necessary. Ending a conversation isn't cold, it's considerate. Here are a few strategies to help make exits a bit smoother. First up, time boxing. This just means setting a time limit up front. If you know you only have 20 minutes, say so at the beginning. You can use a calendar event, an alarm, or even choose a setting with natural time constraints, like meeting in a conference room or grabbing coffee between appointments. This gives you a built-in exit ramp for later. You can also use simple diversions like,
"I've got to get going now, but it was great to catch up."
or
"I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I'll let you go."
some exits might require a gentle interruption, especially when the other person doesn't realize the conversation is over. A quick,
"Can I pause you just for a second? I actually need to head out now, but I've really appreciated this."
allows you to wrap things up with warmth and clarity. Of course, knowing how to end a conversation gracefully often depends on what kind of conversation you're actually in. That's where noticing behavior patterns comes in. Some people will monologue. They are not looking for feedback. They just want someone to sit with them in the moment. You'll hear it in the tone.
"Let me tell you about."
Other times it's venting, and what they need is validation,
"Can you believe that?"
is a good giveaway. And then there's confessing. Those moments when someone opens up, not for advice, but for catharsis. It usually ends with something like,
"Whew, I needed that."
there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these interactions, and we all need them occasionally. But if they happen often, especially if they're one-sided or emotionally draining, it's okay to create space. You don't have to be available all the time. You can be kind and still reduce how often you engage. One helpful tool is a relationship audit, a practice Ximena teaches in the book. Ask yourself who energizes you, who drains you. Takers tend to exhaust us. They talk at us and take our time for granted. Energizers rejuvenate us. They talk to us and respect our energy and presence. You don't have to cut people off, but you can choose to invest more in the life-giving relationships around you. And when it's time to close out a conversation, whether it's with a friend, a colleague, or a stranger, remember that clarity is kindness. Try something like,
"I've loved catching up. Thank you for sharing all this with me. Let's pick this back up soon if you want to keep processing."
it's not rude, it's respectful. It communicates presence and boundaries. And those two things together make a great listener. Chapter 10, difficult conversations. Some conversations are just plain hard. Whether it's an emotionally charged topic, a strained relationship, or just the wrong setting, certain moments take extra care. The good news? With some thoughtful prep, even tough conversations can become opportunities for connection instead of conflict. Let's start with emotional hurdles. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the conversation itself, it's just getting a chance to have it. Kids and pets can be adorable little saboteurs. So plan ahead, arrange for solo time, distract the little ones, or invite your conversation partner into the chaos with a laugh and some grace. Even background noise can play a role. Aim for not too much, not too little. Be intentional about where you meet. Privacy matters. Don't be afraid to pivot if a location isn't working out. And for the love of listening, put away the devices. Then come the relational hurdles. In hierarchical dynamics, whether with a boss, mentor, or parent, it can be tempting to shrink back or feel like your voice doesn't count. If you're in the junior position, remember, they're human too. And if you're in the senior role, never think of yourself as the master of the room. The goal is connection, not control. Family relationships can also get tricky. In familiar settings, especially around the holidays, it's easy to slip into outdated roles without realizing it. You might revert to your teenage self or find old dynamics creeping back in. Being aware of this tendency can help you stay grounded and respond as your present self, not a past version of you. Then there's the issue of filters. And wow, there are a lot of them.
Rose-colored glasses, shock and horror, glass half empty, you can't be serious, skepticism, jealousy, cynicism, the list goes on.
These mental lenses affect how we interpret everything. It's worth pausing to ask,
Is this filter serving me right now? Can I remind myself of this person's good qualities? Can I stay curious instead of becoming critical?
a little self-check goes a long way. When conversations feel competitive, ask yourself,
Is this tension real, or am I reacting to something I secretly admire?
what looks like rivalry is often unspoken insecurity. Then there's the beauty and complexity of cross-cultural communication. I grew up both in the Northeast and the Midwest, and people speak very differently in those regions. In the Northeast, interrupting isn't rude, it's how you show interest. But in the Midwest, that same habit can come off as pushy or impolite.
And then I moved to the South. Oh boy.
I didn't speak Southern Belle at all. Everything here is wrapped in syrupy sweet politeness, and people often take this scenic route in conversation. It's beautiful, but it also left me totally confused at first. I'd walk away from exchanges wondering what we actually talked about. Meanwhile, my more direct approach came off as harsh or abrupt, even though that was never my intention. At my first job in the South, I found myself utterly baffled by emails from management. They were so gently worded and nuanced that I couldn't tell if I was being praised or politely scolded. Finally, I asked another colleague, who was born and raised in the South, to help me interpret what was really being said. She kindly coached me through the subtleties of Southern communication, and I am forever grateful to her. That experience taught me that cultural awareness doesn't just apply to international travel. Sometimes the biggest cultural gaps are within our own country, our own region, or even our own family. And finally, let's talk about topical hurdles, especially the taboo topics. Politics, religion, money, parenting choices. These conversations can be minefields if we're not careful. The goal in these moments isn't to convince or convert, it's to understand. Affirm the other person's dignity, even when you don't share their view. Ask thoughtful questions. Listen with the intention of learning. And if things get too tense, don't be afraid to pause, redirect, or respectfully set boundaries. Above all, learn and grow. You won't always get it right, and that's okay. You might say the wrong thing, misread the moment, or lose your cool. What matters more than perfection is repair. Hard conversations require courage and care. So stay grounded, be clear and kind, and above all, stay curious, even when it's hard. Okay, final thoughts. Listening well isn't passive. It's incredibly intentional. Every part of the process, from staying curious to guiding a conversation or knowing when and how to make a graceful exit, is an opportunity to build trust, connection, and clarity. These aren't just soft skills, they're people skills, and they matter. I'll be the first to admit I am still learning. Some moments I navigate with grace, others not so much. But the more we practice, the more natural it becomes. So let me ask you, what's one of these skills you want to practice this week? Where do you tend to struggle most? Is it staying curious when someone disagrees with you? Guiding a conversation when things get awkward or stuck? Or maybe, like me, you're still figuring out how to exit conversations without feeling abrupt or rude. I genuinely love to hear from you. So drop a comment and let me know what's resonating with you or what you're working on. Next time, we'll wrap up this series with part 3 and explore how rest isn't just something nice to do when you're tired. It's an essential part of showing up well for ourselves and others. And as always, I've linked the book below if you'd like to read along. That's all for now. Take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.